2, 1. Welcome, Bulldog fans, to the first home field Friday of the 2019 football season. Steve, it's been a while since we've done this, but it never gets old. The electricity on campus, and yes, high school sports is great. College pro sports can be fun. There is nothing like the atmosphere of a college campus ahead of a big football game, and tomorrow is setting up as a big football game for Mississippi State and the University of Southern Mississippi.
It's true, David, and you're right. There's just a pageantry with college football. And, and I've mentioned this on the show a couple times this week. There are a lot of friends that we only see during football season, and so they're, whether it be former classmates of ours that have grandchildren or children here now on campus at Mississippi State, this provides a bit of a family reunion type atmosphere. Not that we will ever place what happens out here in the junction over what happens in Davis Wade Stadium, but it's nice for us to have that Bulldog family reunion here in Starkville.
And there's already a good atmosphere taking place. The tailgating is being set up for tomorrow's 2:32 kickoff for ESPNU. You hear the leaf blowers going in the background, so this is not a baseball game. This is still football going. All right, Southern Mississippi, their equipment truck is here. What do we know much about the Golden Eagles? Yes, a good salty defense, as Coach Joe Moorhead says. It's also an air blower as they're filling the police tent over there, so hopefully it doesn't affect our audio too much. And no, the police are not here for us at the moment.
Not as far as you guys know.
Not as far as we know. Also, but they're offensively, they have some questions now. A good quarterback in Jack Abraham, but without a good running game, it's a different sort of animal.
Yeah, Mosley is out indefinitely, and he was their leading rusher a year ago. And listen, the Southern Miss offense a little different than most. Leading rusher had 511 yards last year. I mean, they're not a ground and pound type team. UL Lafayette kind of made their living as a rushing team, rushing for nearly 3,000 yards last year, and then they worked some play action off of that. Southern Miss, a much different team. Those bubble screens and slants are really kind of long handoffs. They want to get the ball in the hands of their playmakers and then their speed merchants rather quickly. It will be a different deal. And one of the things, too, David, last year we saw a lot of these teams try to run the bubble screens to negate the Bulldog pass rush, and you saw Montez Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons kind of get downhill. So the Bulldog defensive backs will have to do a good job getting off blocks and then setting an edge, turning those receivers back towards containment. I think this Bulldog defense is ready to go, and we're going to see a much better tackling effort this week compared to last week.
And that is the question this week, because last week Lafayette, to their credit, had a good power running game and a shifty quarterback. And so the defensive linemen could pretty much, they didn't have to, the pass rush responsibilities are certainly not the same as they have this week. Now the pressure is to get some pressure on the passer before they get the ball unloaded. Now we like our cornerbacks, we like our safety support, but you want to force Abraham to get rid of the ball more quickly. Is this the first time we get a real good measure of what the revamped line is going to look like, assuming, of course, that Lee Autry is not playing in this game?
Yeah, David, I think so, because they're not going to line up and run right at you like a traditional SEC team like an Alabama, LSU, or even an Auburn. Malzahn wants to spread you out and then kind of run between your tackles.
Can I interrupt? This almost sounds a little bit like the old Ole Miss offenses. It was just built so much entirely about the bubble screens, the sideline passes, because there was no running game there.
I think that's a fair assessment. And, they use a lot of their running backs as receivers out of the backfield to get them paired up with linebackers. And I really think this defensive effort this weekend will be more about the linebackers and how they play. Last weekend, our linebackers kind of got pinched inside trying to sell it to stop the run, and as a result, we're susceptible to some of those rollouts and some of that play action. This weekend will be a different deal, and I think what the backers have to really be instrumental, David, is denying that first read for Abraham. I think Bob Sheep will dial up some different protections, different coverages this week, kind of disguise some things. You want him to hang on to the football to give that pass rush a chance to get there.
On the flip side, Mississippi State's offense, a great opening weekend, a very balanced attack between the passing and the rushing. Kylan Hill, one step short of a 200-yard game to start out his junior season. You have to say that the debut of Tommy Stevens was a certain success. He still talked about a couple of passes he missed, but that's all you're missing. That's certainly an upgrade in the passing game. To me, though, besides Hill's running and the way the offensive line patched together as it was able to block, the way the Bulldog receivers made plays was a very encouraging thing, particularly now because they're going to face a better defense this week with better athletes in coverage.
Well, one would think so. And that's really when you kind of nitpick the Bulldog offense. This time last year, after even one game, State scores and Keaton Thompson ties an SEC record in touchdowns accounted for, but all the discussion was about the poor passing percentage and how State needed to be more balanced and how we weren't able to get separation. You didn't have those discussions this week. But Tommy Stevens had a really good game. I think he's in store for a great game. And he mentioned himself, there were a couple of reads he would have done a little bit differently. Jim Moorhead said for the most part he made really good decisions. But Bulldog wide receivers, not a single drop, Running backs ran hard. Nick Gibson, just a couple of carries, but 13.5 yards a carry. You mentioned Kylan Hill. This Bulldog offense last year didn't leave a lot on the table that you came away and said, you know what, this group is a well-polished offense. I think we saw some steps on game one that kind of makes you think this group could be a special group that continue to improve.
As far as injuries goes, Kylan Hill should be back tomorrow, and even with him back, you'd expect that Nick Gibson will get more carries after what he did last week because it's going to be a hot day, and you don't want to wear out your lead dog too early if the game presents. Do we know anything right now about the situation of Darrell Williams, who we hear some positive reports about, in Deron Parker and Evans Wilkerson, for that matter, because that will very much affect the middle of Mississippi State's offensive line?
You know, we don't get an injury report after Monday, but, you know, we do hear things, David. A lot of discussion about there will be some game time decisions. Some guys will come out, dress out, go through pregame warm-ups, and just kind of see what their mobility is. Marquis Spencer is in that group. You mentioned Evans Wilkerson, Darian Parker. We expect a couple of those guys to probably play. Some other guys may be withheld just to kind of give them a chance to kind of, you know, heal a little bit more. But none of these injuries at this point appear to be long-term. So we'll see how that kind of progresses. But there will be a chance. But also, too, David, with that depth at offensive line, you shouldn't have to rush these guys back. And LaQuinton Sharp's gotten a lot of snaps at center this week just in case.
We mentioned suspensions briefly. Lee Autry is not expected to play tomorrow, nor is linebacker Willie Gay, as unofficially but assumedly part of the NCAA penalties of this year. Three other players who missed last week: Travius Johnson, Marcus Murphy, and I know I'm leaving somebody out from that group. But also the suspensions that are not part of that, we believe, will be Jace Crispin, who is expected to play tomorrow, place kicker. Michael Story, not certain about his status, but certainly we expect him back by next week, if not tomorrow. But at this point, we kind of have a pretty good idea of who's going to be missing 8 games this season.
Yeah, we think so, David. And you know, the university's not going to make an official declaration, and nor should they. And I know some people are kind of eager to know that. But the bottom line is, this is more about who is going to play rather than who's not going to play. And I think we saw last weekend these Bulldogs are capable. And that's one of the things, one of the lazy takes you see people make. They say, oh, the defense is wearing down because of these suspensions. Guys, most of the guys suspended weren't going to make a travel roster anyway. And so, yeah, there's a couple guys here and there that you'd like. But, you know, the depth is there. And one of the things about that defensive tackle depth, we didn't see Cameron Young or Nathan Pickering last week. We expect to see them this week, which will give you basically a 3-2-man team that will rotate throughout the ball game. And so that'll be something, too, I think will kind of help the Bulldogs conditioning later in ball games.
Also keep in mind that because this is a home game, Mississippi State can dress out more than the 70 that went last week, so they have more flexibility in how many backup linebackers, defensive linemen, and offensive linemen they bring into this game. So tomorrow, 2:32 kickoff. I should be out here sometime about 11 in the morning. And by the way, yes, it's going to be hot. We get that. Come on. It's Mississippi in the summertime. You expect it to be hot. Come here, enjoy it. Mississippi State has put some advisories out. Water refills will be available, not just at a tap somewhere, although that would certainly take us back to our roots down in South Mississippi ourselves. Yeah, well, you had a hose. We didn't in those places out on our farm. No. Things should be set up. I would advise you to go to hellstate.com and consult Gameday if you're not familiar, and to brush up on parking routes, parking places. Some things have changed here at the junction. We're standing, in fact, in an area that has been sealed off for queuing for Gate A, which I suspect, I believe Mississippi State is pretty certain that a lot of people will try to get into the stands later than usual tomorrow because of the heat and save it as long as they can, although I can't imagine it's going to be too cool under a lot of those tailgating tents either. But a great atmosphere expected tomorrow. Steve and I will be talking pregame. We'll have some updates on recruiting. I know, Steve, you and Gene were out watching some Colin players last night. You'll have some high school games to report on. We'll get an idea of who, if any, players are coming tomorrow for official or unofficial visits. It's early in the season, so you don't expect a lot of those. But we'll get some updates on that. We'll know what we do know, what we can find out about suspensions and eligibilities and things like that for the game, and maybe talk a few matchups as well. So if you're not here, tune us in tomorrow. If you are here, tune us in tomorrow anyway on your mobile. And if you can at all make it here, do. Just bought my wife a ticket for the game. It's going to be in a somewhat shaded part. I'm trying to be a good husband these days, but I know after 60 years you learn these things. But it's going to be a great atmosphere. You only get 7 of these a year plus a bowl game. We always remind you. Take advantage of this one. The weather forecast is hot, but it's great. Come to campus. Come enjoy it. Football is back on the campus of Mississippi State University. So for our entire team from Gene's Page 24/7, from the Junction on the MSU campus, this is David Murray.